gun. They can fight, but don't use a gun. Gun is a weapon to kill people. It's not to make people come down. Or you call police.
And Souvenir's father has this plea.
But we have to come together now. If we have a problem, to resolve the problem. Not a gun. Keep shoot each other. That don't make sense.
Hello, 911?
Hello? Yes, my boyfriend just got shot in the Walgreens.
Okay.
Surveillance cameras inside a Miramar, Florida Walgreens caught all of it. 11:20 in the morning. A man walks in on his phone, heading for the register. A woman follows a few minutes later, a baby in her arms. Then a third person walks through the same doors, sees the man on the phone, and stops. Within minutes, 2 of those 3 adults will have confirmed out loud that they are both carrying guns. Within seconds after that, one of them will be dead on the pharmacy floor. This is not a robbery. It is not gang violence. It is not a planned attack. It is 2 strangers, a misunderstood phone call, and a legal outcome that split a family and a community down the middle. One man ends up in the ground, the other walks free, and prosecutors say he broke no law. We're going to lay out exactly what the cameras, the police report, and the courtroom later revealed, in order, without repeating ourselves, and without picking a side before the evidence is in front of you. If cases like this one, where the law and a grieving family land on opposite sides of the same set of facts, are the kind of story you want more of, subscribe to Mr. Crimax now. We build every episode around cases the national outlets touch once and move past. This one, they didn't finish. His name was Anthony Souvenir. He was 27 years old. It was his birthday. Here's what makes this case different from most self-defense shootings you'll ever hear about. Nobody actually disputes most of the facts. Both men agree they argued. Both men agree they told each other they were armed. What they disagree on is a matter of a few feet and a few seconds. And that tiny gap is the entire reason one man walked out of that courthouse a free man, while the other man's mother is still fighting in public for the truth. Anthony Souvenir grew up in Miami and later settled in Miramar with his girlfriend and their 1-year-old son. Online and in the local entertainment scene, he went by the name Big Fetty, building a presence around music videos and the industry circles that come with them. He had recently moved into a new home. He was close with both parents and had 4 siblings. Anthony's public identity was tied closely to image. In the entertainment world he was trying to break into, how you're seen carries real weight. The clothes, the jewelry, the lifestyle posted online aren't just vanity. They're part of building credibility before you fully arrived. Friends and family describe him as someone who is still grinding toward that goal, one video and one post at a time, while also settling into a much quieter role at home as a new father. His mother, Linda, was in the middle of a serious fight of her own. She had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer roughly a year earlier, and the illness had already put real strain on the family, medically and financially, before anything happened at that Walgreens. Anthony also had an open legal matter. In 2022, he was stopped following a road rage incident in Hollandale Beach. Officers found a loaded firearm in his backpack, along with drugs and an ID that was not his. He was charged with several offenses, pleaded not guilty, and the case was still pending, with a court date on the calendar for June 2025. Whether he was legally permitted to be carrying a gun that February morning is a detail investigators never fully resolved on the record.
No money, there's no gold, there's no silver.
The man he crossed paths with was Jaime Taylor, 28. Taylor had no criminal record. He held a valid, legally issued concealed carry permit. He'd played quarterback at Booker T. Washington High School in Miami, and later played college football at Northwest Missouri State. By early 2025, that athletic chapter was behind him, and he was living a far less public life than Anthony, working, raising a 1-year-old daughter, and carrying a firearm legally, the way tens of thousands of permit holders in Florida do every single day without incident. That morning, his plan was ordinary. Walk into the Walgreens, load money onto a Cash App account, and leave. Neither man had ever met the other before that morning. By outward appearances, they had almost nothing in common. One building a name in Miami's entertainment scene, the other a former quarterback with a legally registered firearm and a stable job. But strip away the surface and the 2 men were living almost parallel lives that week. Both were raising a child who had just turned 1. Both were legally carrying a weapon that morning for reasons that had nothing to do with each other. Both walked into a Walgreens expecting to be in and out in minutes. Neither one left that store the way they walked in. February 3, 2025 began as a celebration. Anthony's family gathered that morning to mark his 27th birthday, singing, laughing, the kind of low-key gathering families have before anyone heads off to work or errands. His father, Eve, later told reporters the morning was full of joy, and that Anthony repeated the same thing to him before walking out the door, that he loved him. By early afternoon, Anthony would be gone. Eve held on to that morning as the last complete memory he had of his son. Anthony left the house to run a short errand, a quick stop at the Walgreens on Miramar Boulevard and Palm Avenue. Nothing about the plan suggested anything out of the ordinary. His girlfriend and their son were already planning to meet him nearby. There was no reason for anyone in that family to think twice about a Monday morning pharmacy run. It was the kind of errand that happens 1,000 times a day in every city in the country, one that almost never makes the news. Jaime Taylor arrived at the Walgreens first, mid-phone call, heading toward the front register to load money onto Cash App. A few minutes behind him, Anthony's girlfriend walked in with their baby son. About a minute after that, Anthony walked in himself. According to the store manager's account to police, Anthony believed Taylor was staring at his girlfriend. He was not. Taylor was on the phone the entire time, and the call had nothing to do with either of them. Anthony approached anyway. Taylor, still mid-call, told him directly that he wasn't talking to him. He was on the phone. Anthony's girlfriend stepped in to try to defuse it and get him to walk away. For a moment, it looked like it was over. Anthony walked off. Then he turned back around. The argument picked back up, and this time Taylor made it clear he was armed, warning Anthony off. Anthony didn't retreat. Instead, according to the police report, he told Taylor he had one too, confirming out loud that both men were now carrying firearms in the middle of an argument that had started over a misread glance. What happened in the seconds after that is where the two sides of this case start to diverge, and we'll get into that divergence in detail later, because it matters enormously to how this case ended. What both the police report and Taylor's own statements agree on, Anthony moved toward Taylor. Taylor drew his weapon and fired. Anthony was struck and collapsed inside the store. Taylor left the building immediately afterward. Miramar Police Chief Delrish Moss later described the entire sequence to reporters in strikingly plain terms. Two customers in the store got into an argument, exchanged words, and one of them produced a gun and fired. No mention of gangs, no mention of robbery, no mention of any history between the two men, because there wasn't one. Just an argument that escalated in the span of a few minutes between two people who had never spoken to each other before that morning.
The shot sent the store into chaos. Customers and employees scattered, some toward the exits, others locking themselves inside the pharmacy section in the back, waiting to see if anyone was coming back through the door. Multiple 911 calls came in within seconds of each other. Anthony's girlfriend called first, telling the dispatcher her boyfriend had been shot by a man she didn't know who had already run off. Other callers, hiding in the pharmacy, begged dispatchers to send help quickly, afraid the shooter might return. Paramedics arrived within minutes and rushed Anthony to Memorial Regional Hospital in extremely critical condition. His girlfriend stood outside in the parking lot, their 1-year-old son in her arms, as the ambulance pulled away. He would not survive his injuries. It was his 27th birthday. The Walgreens location closed for the rest of that day. Investigators taped off the parking lot and the entrance, while detectives processed the scene. Crisis counselors and victim advocates were brought in on site to work with the employees and customers who had been inside during the shooting. People who had gone in that morning to pick up a prescription or grab something off a shelf, and instead found themselves living through a homicide. If you've been with us this far, this is exactly the point in the story where we ask you to hit subscribe on Mr. Crimex, because what happens next, the arrest, the legal fight, and the decision that followed months later, is the part of this case most people never actually hear about. Jaime Taylor did not run far. Later that same day, he walked into a Miramar police station and turned himself in. He was booked into the Broward County Jail and charged in connection with Anthony's death. At his bond hearing, a Broward County judge described the charges as serious and ordered Taylor held without bond. He was appointed a public defender and made clear through his attorney that he intended to fight the case rather than negotiate a plea. Taylor's account from the outset was consistent. He said he feared for his life the moment Anthony confirmed he was also armed and began moving toward him. Early reporting on the case wasn't even fully settled on what he was charged with. Some initial coverage described the charge as manslaughter, the charge that carried through his bond hearing, and the one prosecutors would spend the following months evaluating, was murder without premeditation, what Florida law defines as second-degree murder. That distinction matters because it's a far more serious charge than manslaughter, and it's why the judge's no bond order landed the way it did. Taylor remained in custody at the Broward County Jail while his public defender began building a defense around Florida's self-defense statutes. This is the part of the case that never got the attention it deserved, and it's the reason this shooting is still argued about in Miramar today. The original police report, filed in the days after the shooting, stated plainly that Anthony had not pulled his own firearm out and had made no move to strike Taylor before Taylor drew his weapon and pointed it. That same report noted Taylor did not attempt to retreat or de-escalate. Instead, he stepped toward Anthony before firing. But months later, after charges were dropped, Taylor gave a different, more detailed account directly to reporters. He said Anthony walked away toward the back of the store, then came all the way back to the front and told him he was going to show him, and that it was only after Anthony pulled his own gun out that Taylor fired. In Taylor's telling, he did not shoot first. He says he shot in response to Anthony drawing on him. That's a meaningful difference. One version has an unarmed hand reaching toward a backpack. The other has a fully drawn weapon. Under Florida's self-defense laws, that distinction is close to everything. The law protects someone who reasonably believes they're facing an imminent deadly threat, and it does not require them to retreat first if they're somewhere they're legally allowed to be. A version of events where the other man has already drawn his gun is a far stronger legal shield than a version where he's simply reaching for a bag. Prosecutors in the Broward State Attorney's Office spent months reviewing surveillance footage, witness statements, and the full police file before making their call. Requests from local reporters for the surveillance footage to be released publicly have not been granted, which is part of why Anthony's family still says the full picture has never been shown to the public.
Now, the police report also said that Souvenir's girlfriend said that Souvenir actually pulled out his own gun to go after Taylor after he was shot, but he collapsed. We did reach out to Taylor's family, but so far we have not heard back. Taylor right now is charged with second-degree murder. We are live in Miramar. Peter Dench, CBS News, Miami.
There's a second layer to this investigation worth understanding, because it's the part most viewers never hear explained clearly. Florida's self-defense law does not require a person to prove their attacker actually intended to shoot them. It only requires that their fear of imminent death or serious injury was reasonable, given what a person in that exact situation could see and know in that moment. That's a lower bar than most people assume, and it's precisely why the sequence of who moved first and what was in whose hand carries so much legal weight. It's also why prosecutors, not a jury, made the final call here. Under Florida's process, the state attorney's office can decline to prosecute a case entirely if the evidence supports a self-defense claim, without ever putting the question in front of 12 people in a courtroom. One additional detail has circulated in some post-ruling coverage, an allegation that Anthony may not have been legally permitted to carry a firearm himself, tied to his prior arrest. That claim has appeared in outlets sympathetic to Taylor's case, but it was never confirmed through an official court filing or a statement from the state attorney's office, so we're presenting it here as reported, not as settled fact. It's also worth understanding what the state attorney's office was not doing when it made this decision. Dropping the charges wasn't a ruling that Anthony did something wrong, and it wasn't a verdict of innocence for Taylor in some broader sense. It was a legal determination that the state could not disprove a valid self-defense claim beyond a reasonable doubt if the case went to trial. That's a narrower, more technical finding than the word justifiable tends to suggest to the public, and it's part of why decisions like this one so often satisfy no one. The victim's family hears a man walked free. The legal system hears that it could not meet its burden of proof against a recognized offense. Both of those readings are accurate, and neither one erases the other. In April 2025, the Broward State Attorney's Office announced it was dropping all charges against Jaime Taylor and classifying the shooting as a justifiable homicide under Florida's Stand Your Ground framework. Taylor's clean record, valid permit, and the sequence of events, Anthony confirming he was armed, then advancing on Taylor, were central to that decision. Taylor spoke publicly after the ruling, saying it came down to a split-second choice and that, in his words, it was kill or be killed. He said he thinks about Anthony's family regularly and that he plans to go back to finishing his education and focus on raising his daughter. Anthony's family did not accept the outcome. His mother, Linda, told reporters justice wasn't served and that the case was bigger than her son alone. On a fundraising page set up to help the family with funeral costs, she wrote about Anthony as a devoted father with real plans for his son's future, and about how losing him arrived on top of her own ongoing health battle, making an already difficult recovery even harder. His father, Eve, spoke publicly about wanting fewer guns and more conversation, saying people should be able to work out their problems without reaching for a weapon. The family has continued to push for the surveillance video to be made public, saying they still don't feel they've seen the full picture of what happened to their son that day. Anthony Souvenir left behind a 1-year-old son, a girlfriend who was standing feet away when it happened, 4 siblings, and 2 parents, one of them still fighting cancer while also grieving her son. Jaime Taylor walked away from the case with no charges, but by his own account, with the weight of having taken a life he says he never wanted to take. He has a 1-year-old daughter of his own.
Two men, both new fathers, crossed paths for less than 10 minutes over a phone call that had nothing to do with either of them. Neither walked in looking for what happened. The law reviewed the same 10 minutes and decided only one of them broke it. And that decision, right or wrong in the eyes of the people who loved Anthony, is where this case still sits, unresolved for the family, closed in the eyes of the state. If this case left you with more questions than answers, that's exactly the kind of story we cover every week on Mr. Crimex, the ones where the legal outcome and the human cost don't line up neatly. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. There's no version of this case where everyone gets to be right. The law looked at 10 minutes inside a pharmacy and found no crime. A family looked at the same 10 minutes and lost a son on his birthday. Both of those things are true at once, and that's what makes this case worth remembering. Not as a story about a villain and a victim, but as a reminder of how fast an ordinary Monday can turn permanent, and how little room self-defense law leaves for anything in between. What stands out most, looking back at every stage of this case, is how many points there were where it could have gone differently. Anthony walked away from Taylor once, and if he'd kept walking, this is a story that never gets told. Taylor could have stepped back rather than closing the distance between them, and there's a version of that choice where he's the one who never has to explain himself to a judge. Neither man made the choice that would have ended the morning quietly, and the law was only ever built to judge what happened after that point, not to explain why two fathers, with nothing against each other, ended up standing that close together with their hands near their guns. Florida is one of dozens of states with a stand-your-ground law on the books, and cases like this one are exactly why the law remains so contested nationally. Supporters argue it protects people in genuine danger from being forced to retreat into a worse position. Critics argue it lowers the threshold for using deadly force in disputes that could have ended with someone simply walking away. Both arguments were on full display in this single Walgreens on a single morning, and neither side of that debate got a clean win. A young father is dead. Another man carries what he did for the rest of his life, free under the law but not free of it. And a family in Miramar is still asking, more than a year later, for the one thing no court order can give them back.